Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's highly anticipated session, AI-driven healthcare IT, bridging innovation for better patient outcomes. And I am Grant McGaw, CEO of 5 Star BDM, and I'll be your moderator for this powerful conversation on how artificial intelligence is reshaping the landscape of healthcare IT. Not tomorrow, but right now. And healthcare leaders across the country are asking the same questions. How do we implement AI without disrupting mission critical systems? And how do we remain compliant, secure, and cost conscious while still moving forward? This session was designed with those exact questions in mind. And AI has the power to enhance clinical workflows, streamline operations, and improve patient outcomes, but only if it is done right. And that's where today's experts come in. First, we will be joined by Ray Crespo, Director of IT Clinical Applications at the University of Miami. And with over 15 years in healthcare IT, Ray brings deep insight into the real world challenges of AI integration, especially when it comes to Epic, interoperability, and clinical operations. And also with us is Roanoke Shaw, CEO of Agile Infoways. Roanoke's company specializes in building scalable, secure AI solutions that fit within existing healthcare infrastructure. And he will be sharing how organizations can turn vision into execution with smart step-by-step AI integration. So I want to make sure that the audience knows that this is interactive. This is a live session, and I encourage you to put your questions into the chat, and then we can answer them real time. So my first question is going to go over to Ray. Now, Ray, you have been leading clinical IT transformations at the University of Miami, and we want to know what are the biggest obstacles preventing AI adoption in legacy healthcare IT systems?
Yep, absolutely. So, welcome everyone. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here. First and foremost, most of those systems, really legacy systems, were not really meant to connect with outside world. The systems have potentially legacy MSDOS components of it. There are data silos and fragmentation. There's obviously interoperability issues, as you mentioned already. There's a huge lack of standardization, unstructured, incomplete, or inconsistent data, and really outdated infrastructure, right? So think about it, like 15 to 20 years ago, there were still a lot of healthcare systems that were on paper records. So now imagine trying to put in those paper records into an AI system and understanding that handwriting notes from those providers, from those clinicians. So there's a lot of that still going on that is there, and paper charts were a thing. Also, there were a number of homegrown records from many different hospitals. Some had just some components of registration, others had some components of billing, and then paper records. So all of that unstructured, incomplete data that's out there, or really a lack of standardization, makes it just that much different.
This is important to note because you've kind of got us started to understand. And what I'm hearing, from a technological perspective, are that it's a challenge with legacy systems. So the question now goes over to Rono, giving the playing field of where Ray sits. What are the most effective ways to integrate AI into existing healthcare IT systems?
Thank you for that question, Grant, and thank you, Ray, for answering that question. Yeah, it was a great insight. So, bringing the AI into the existing healthcare IT system, there are a number of different steps that usually we would take in when we go as a integration partner. First is the technical guide goes into step by step process. So first is an API based integration, because API really acts as a bridge between the AI models that we are designing, and that really goes with the existing healthcare system. Like, if we have to integrate with electronic health record system, EHR, or laboratory information system, or even the CRM system that the customers are using. So when you're trying to combine the AI models and the existing EHR system, you need to follow certain standards like FHIR or HL7 standards. So this FHIR or health level 7 standards, those are really useful for seamless data exchange between the healthcare applications. We also emphasize using RESTful APIs, so develop the secure RESTful APIs that will allow the real-time data transmissions. And on top of that, the authentication and authorization should be implemented. So you can think of using OAuth 2.0 or maybe JWT tokens to secure the data exchange. So after this API layer, what we emphasize is you when you're building the architecture, make sure the architecture is kind of a modular microservices architecture that you should always keep it in mind. So microservices that allow the AI models to be deployed as an independent services. Now when you deploy these AI models as an independent services, it's easy to scale them or get it interacted with the different components of the healthcare system. So it's very, very important. And for that purpose, you can use containerization, like use Docker or Kubernetes to package all these AI models to make it kind of a lightweight containers. So also very important part is the load balancing. So use the API gateways, and these API gateways are very important because they would distribute the incoming request across the different AI microservices evenly. So it's very, very important. But when you're building this, you also need to build the fault tolerance. So design each microservices to handle the failure independently. So that's very, very important. Now when you're doing this, as Ray mentioned about this data, it's unstructured data, there's so much problem. So you have to prepare the data pipelines for the AI systems to really work properly. Now AI systems really require the high quality data for accurate predictions. Now data pipelines ensure that the raw healthcare data is transformed into clean and structured inputs. And there are various processes that you have to take when you're preparing the data pipelines. First is data extraction. How do you extract the data properly? So use like ETL tools like Apache NiFi to extract the data. Once data is extracted, now you're going through data cleaning procedure. So implement like Python or Spark based scripts to remove the duplicates from the data. Then if you have a missing values, you have to fill those missing values and then standardize the data format. Once the data formats are standardized, then now you have to encrypt that data. So encrypt that sensitive data using like AES 256 or something before even you start the processing that data. And at the same time, now you have to think about the data storage. So store all this processed data in a secure scalable storage solution such as AWS S3 or Google Cloud Storage, whatever you are guys are comfortable with. Now very important part is when you're designing these AI models, there are two ways. Either you can put everything in cloud or you can do also edge AI, like on premises. So some models has to be done at the on premises, some model has to be done in AI in cloud. So very important part is how do you combine cloud and edge computing. Like you really need to know what you are doing. So usually when we start the model training, the AI model training, we do it in the cloud in the beginning. Like use TensorFlow or PyTorch or something on the cloud platforms for large scale AI model training. When you're designing a very large scale AI model training, it's always recommended to do it in the cloud. Now if you have light AI models that are developed, you can always use it on the edge devices. So you don't have to send the data to the cloud. Edge devices means, for example, ECG monitors, or any kind of diagnostic tools where you can use the light AI models directly on the edge. And that's where, when wherever you see a low latency processing, you have to make sure that we use the edge devices for time sensitive AI tasks. Now what are the time sensitive AI tasks is like patient monitoring or any kind of anomaly detection that takes place. It's very, very important that for any low latency processing, we are using edge devices. Now, apart from that, the most important part is the model explainability. You can design number of AI models, but how do you trust those AI decisions? Like clinicians always struggle because they are not really tech people or AI people.
Yeah.
So when you're designing these AI models, you have to use something called explainable AI, which is called XAI, where clinicians are able to understand the AI decisions. We emphasize something called LIME, LIME. LIME stands for local interpretable model agnostic explanation. That really provides the localized explanations for any model predictions. So when you know that what model is prediction and how it is making that decision, it's easy for clinicians to adopt that and work on it. And on top of that, you have to make sure there is enough audit trails are kept. So log all AI predictions and user interactions for regulatory compliance as well. And also we emphasize using visualization tools. So use libraries like Plotly or something, which really generate the visual explanations of these AI models. So when you have explainable AI model, it's easy to adapt quickly. Now, while you're designing all this AI model, the most important part is the security and the compliance layers. Now we understand that in the compliance with the regulations such as HIPAA or GDPR, this is an absolute non-negotiable in the healthcare world. So how do you do that? So there are different ways. First is very important part is the data anonymization. So use like K anonymity or maybe differential privacy techniques. Then on top of that, you have to make sure that you have enough access control, like implement role-based access control, RBAC, or attribute-based access control, which is ABAC. So once you have access control in place, you make sure there is end-to-end encryption in place. So you have to encrypt the data, both which is going into transit and also at the rest. So the encryption is very important, and at the same time, you have to do the regular audits of this. So conduct the periodic security audits. You can use different tools like Nessus or something for that. Now when we deploy this AI model either on the healthcare existing healthcare IT system or even integrating with the legacy system, we usually start with the pilot program. And the pilot program, we always make sure there is a human in the loop always there. So first is you have to do a stakeholder alignment where we involve the clinicians, the IT teams, the compliance officers from the beginning. And when we deploy these AI models, there is a user acceptance criteria that we run a pilot program with a small user group. And then we use special like platforms like Jira or Trello, where we collect all the feedback from the users. And then the most important part is the iterative improvement. So we continuously retrain and optimize that model based on the pilot program feedback. So it's very, very important when you're deploying the AI, you go with the pilot program with the human in the loop. And at the same time, you need to have an automated machine learning pipeline set up as well, because this machine learning operations that would really automate the entire AI life cycle. You need to make sure that when the AI model is developed and ready to go, but to keep it more accurate, you have to retrain over and over the period of time based on the feedback and the data that we get back. So you definitely need to do model versioning first of all. So you can use different tools like ML Flow, where they're going to do the version control of this whole AI life cycle. Then you have to automate the training pipeline. So set up like CI/CD pipelines with Jenkins or GitLab, which will help you for retraining the models. And then even though you have done everything, now you have to even monitor them. Like, so you have to monitor you can use Azure Monitor, even whatever, to detect the data drift or performance degradation, even in the AI models. So it's like so much that really goes in and out, starting from right data, training the AI, using the cloud versus edge, and then automating the machine learning, retraining the AI models. So there's so much, and then you have to also monitor these AI models. So, these are some of the different practices that I just mentioned that can be used to integrate the AI into the existing healthcare IT system. This can go much beyond what I explained, but yes. So I would stop here. But these are some of the techniques that people can use.
Well, I tell you, what you took us through there, you just took, your basic older model Honda that Ray might have in his deployment, and you just made it into a Maserati, is what it sounded like to me. But you meticulously took us through that process of how you take a legacy system and make it bring it up to speed and up to date with the different type of modalities that you have, so you can have continuity throughout the process that's taking place. I really appreciate you doing that. Now, to Ray, let's say now Roanoke's team is successful. They're able to now have an AI engine, at your disposal. Now, what do you do with it, right? You got, it's in your system. What we've found is that a lot of people in your shoes and others are asking this question, and that is, what are the most promising AI use cases that have directly improved patient care, which is very important, or optimize hospital workflows?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different options, within AI reading healthcare, and starting from the clinical decision support systems, right? So you have IBM Watson, for example, that develop AI systems to help oncologists with large volume data of medical literature to really look at clinical trials and preventive treatment options. You have from the diagnostic imaging side, Google DeepMind develop AI systems to really help detect diabetic retinopathy and age-related macular degeneration on eye scans. Right. So from there on, you also have other AI modules that are really being trained to look at early detection of lung cancer, breast cancer, and a lot of that imaging analysis that is out there. Then you go into process automation. You also have AI-driven tools for her appointment scheduling, insurance claim processing. That's a time-consuming task right there, right? We have also remote monitoring devices, right? So think about wearable devices that are really AI powered to look at diabetes or hypertension, right? So you look at your blood sugar, your high blood pressure, and be able to monitor those patients within that. A space that is growing quite a bit, and I think is extremely important, and the next couple of years will definitely be developed fully. It's natural language processing and ambient listening. So this is like summarization of clinical notes, quick retrieval, past medical history, medications, lab results, really trying to find a way to give less computer time and more time with the patients. Let's face it, the patients do not go to a doctor because they like to go there. They go to a doctor because they have a situation that needs to be taken care of, and they want to speak with a doctor, not with a machine. So by really helping the provider spend more time with the patients and reducing clicks, we all know they count those clicks, and really getting to the point of like reducing that computer time will helping with that. Workflow optimization is another one, right? And there's another company, Juventus, that is really working already on this. Predictive staffing, bed management and utilization, preventing bottlenecks, really is reducing the wait time, right? And making sure that patients are also, being taken care of in a timely manner. And last but not least, that I could think of is pop health management. The area of population health, really, where they're also looking at, they're using the systems to identify high-risk chronic conditions like diabetes again, and allowing for early interventions, which is a thing that's extremely important as well, because then it prevents from those chronic conditions from, really becoming something you can't come back from, right? So
these are important. Now, I got a question that came to me via text, actually. They texted me because they couldn't get on live, but they were very curious about this. Now, this came from a clinician, and he's been utilizing IT systems for a while, and they're always a little gun shy of something new. He's like, oh, you're adding more to my plate. You're not taking things away. So the question is, and it's right there in the chat, it says, how do you navigate resistance from clinical staff or IT teams when introducing an AI-powered automation into your workflow? And I'm sure, Ray, that you deal with this. Tell us about that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. So you heard me say this before. So I roll by a triad, and the triad is people, process, technology, right? So you have to get the right people involved. You have to get them involved from the very beginning. You don't want to come in on a Monday morning and say, this is the new shiny thing that's going to take care of your life, and not have a discussion with them first. You want to have that communicated effectively. You want to also be able to bring those people in to discuss the process, then leverage the technology, right? So you want to look at current state. You want to see what you're doing today. What is your problem? Define the problem you're having before I come in and try to give you a solution with technology. I was a clinician myself for 15 years before jumping into the IT world, so I know exactly what that means. Get them involved, right? So get their buy-in, get them to understand, this is what it would look like, here's what it should be. Do pilots in small areas, right? So, but communication, effective, transparent communication is important, and really keeping that triad of people, process, technology in place. Don't mix them up. The people need to be in the buy-in first. They need to understand what it is, because yes, a clinician does not want to have a tool that may come perhaps as aid, but they don't know anything about,
Right.
right? And at the very beginning, it's still going to be a bell curve of I need to now learn about this tool. So get them involved from the beginning, get them to understand what it is we're trying to do. Understand also from them what are their pain points, what are the actual problems you're trying to solve, and then come in and try to tailor the technology for that, so that you can actually help them, right? Because we're here to help them. We're only a service department. We're here to help those clinicians and those patients ultimately.
I love that. You get buy-in because when people take ownership, they get accountability. I'm going to bring this over to Rona because, from the vendor perspective, right? So now we've got the room, right? We've got Ray here. He's in clinical IT team. We've got Roanoke here. He's the vendor side. I'm playing the devil's advocate. I'm more or less the end user, the clinicians. I'm trying to like, hey, what are you guys trying to do here? I'm just trying to, solve a problem and get better patient outcomes. So when we go over to Rona, because he's got to have this discussion, and he knows when you're implementing anything, especially AI or for the different IT teams, I want to know what are the first steps that you feel the whole team should take to ensure a smooth and cost-effective deployment.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. Smooth and cost effective. We need both when we are doing the deployment, and especially in the healthcare world, it's even more tricky question. But there are different steps that we can identify when we start consulting with a lot of healthcare companies that we work with, or larger hospitals, or we work with some publicly traded healthcare company as well. And there are different steps that we take when we engage, because every healthcare facility has an existing system, and if they bring us on board, what are the things that we do even to get their buy-in or confidence? It's like you just don't go inside and start working. There is a process, and I'll tell you some steps on the process that we do is, and we have to be very truthful when we do all this. It's like, first is we identify the real need of these AI models that they have there, because everybody is running, oh, I need AI. But okay, what's your business, how you're doing it, what's the flow? And so and we try to identify a use case first, like identify, and the use case that we would identify in the beginning has to be very high impact use case, because that's where they would really understand that this AI is going to help them in their company. So we probably would start with, let's say, predictive analysis, or maybe workflow automation, or maybe patient monitoring, something like that. So whatever the area that we decide, one use case to begin with, we will try to collaborate with the stakeholders, and we will give this use case to them, and they have to validate first of all. The moment they validate, they have a confidence that, oh wow, this is what they're trying to implement, and that's going to help in my workflow automation or monitoring the patient or whatever. And then we align those AI objectives once they validate the use case. Once that is done, the biggest challenge that we see is the data readiness evaluation. There is data is everywhere in healthcare company, and that's the biggest problem. Like when we design this AI model, we have to assess the quality of the data, like what quality of data they're going to give it to us. And then we really need a quantity, because when you're training the AI models, we need larger quantity. And sometimes the accessibility of the data is also difficult. You have to go through so much of compliance even to get that data to give it to the AI models. So we do this whole data readiness evaluation process. We implement the data governance policies, and then we also make sure that we anonymize the data where we comply with the HIPAA guidelines or GDPR guidelines based on where we are working, and then after doing this, we establish the whole secure data pipelines. So now the data pipelines are ready. That okay, now once the data pipelines are ready, now we go with the phased AI adoption strategy. So we discuss that. We go with small pilot projects. We only want to touch the non-critical areas to validate the AI models. And then once we validate the AI models, at the same time we have this ROI calculation that we want to show it to the management that hey, the investment that we have done on this AI model or pilot project, what is your ROI looks like. So once that is, when you talk about ROI, now you're involving the top level management. A
Yes.
lot of things are involved. So it's kind of
Yeah.
phase approach. You start working with this low level people, clinicians, but now you're involving the management on the ROI side. So gradually expand these AI applications across different departments. So that's a very small phased AI strategy that should be implemented. The major problem that we face is the technology infrastructure. That is the
Mhm.
major problem that we see, because we have to evaluate the what is their IT infrastructure look like. What is their existing IT infrastructure? Can they even take that AI workloads that we are developing? So we help them to identify the right cloud investment, like cloud based AI platform, because we don't want them to have a lot of crazy upfront costs, buy everything on premises. Okay, we are still in the phase strategy, we are still in the pilot programs. Make sure we go into the cloud based AI platforms where we can train the models, we can deploy the models, we can scale the models also. So every small thing that we are doing, we have to get different stakeholder aligned, get their approvals. And then when we do this whole AI model deployment, we implement the containerization to standardize the process across different environments. And at the same time, we discuss this on the security side, that we also have to make sure that AI solutions that we are designing and the data protection policies that we have implemented has to be meant by the HIPAA, but the FDA guidelines as well. So that's very, very important. And for before that, that's why I told that, we try to design the AI model, which is explainable AI. So the people, we are trying to keep the transparency so the clinicians exactly would understand in the even the pilot project, this is how the AI is actually giving the output. And then we go through AI middleware integration, where I told about these APIs that we use for data exchange between the AI models and the EHR. Now, most important part is when you have AI models done, you deploy. The critical part is the training and change management.
Mhm.
Because now you have to train that clinician saying, hey, we have done it, now you have to start using it. So you have to provide the comprehensive trainings to clinicians or administrative staff on how to use these AI solutions effectively, because there's so much they're scared. Like what if it gives a wrong results, or what if something goes wrong? It's all liabilities issues and everything like that. So you have to foster a culture of an AI acceptance. And
Mhm.
you can only do that by you involve the end users, involve them even in the design phase when you're designing this AI model, and let them test the models as well after the deployment as well. So that's how we do. And performance monitoring is very, very important. And the continuous improvement is also very important. So implement the real time monitoring systems to measure that the AI model performance is actually going well. You really have to identify the drift also, like if it's not that everything would go as per the plan. So you have to make sure, and that's why where the important part comes is you have to regularly retrain the model with the updated data.
Mhm.
The data is a key game, because so much different. Back before 50 years, the patients were dying, but we didn't even identify that there is something called cancer. Like
Mhm.
there was a cancer before 50 years, but we had no idea. Now we are in the research phase, we know different types of things which are being invented every single day. So your data has to be trained with the latest trend, latest
Right.
updates, latest diseases. So you have to have these different best practices where healthcare IT teams can really minimize the risk, and they can optimize the cost, and they can really ensure that these AI integrations that is being done is really successful at the end.
This interesting discussion, and we got to really get into this as I bring this next question over to Ray. And I want the audience to really think about this as you look at what you just said about data. And we're talking about if you're only utilizing, I call it snapshots in time. And remember when generative AI got very popular just 2 years ago, right? Where there's a lot of hallucinations like in chat TPT and things like that. And some of the answers that were coming out were like not good because of the data set, right? And they were only using data sets like from, at that time, maybe from, I think you would have put a timestamp in there. This data is only good up until like April of 2020 or something like that, right? We need to understand that because not all the time is the data available in an AI engine up to speed with real time information that's constantly changing, right? So my question to Ray is, as you look ahead, now we've gone from 2020, I think it was 2022 November to now where we are in 2025 and generative AI, and people are more familiar with LLMs or large language models and generative AI. It's mainstream now. Think about 3 to 5 years. So as you look ahead at what you're doing, clinical applications on Epic, how do you see AI evolving in healthcare IT over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So first and foremost, as we were discussing, seamless integration with clinical workflows, right? So what we would probably call it smart EHRs. The data is always been an issue. Now most health systems already are in either Epic, Cerner, Meditech. They have a large EMR presence, so it's a little bit easier to connect and really have good, solid data that already it sits there in the EMR. So easier to extract, easier to go through, easier to train, easier to, again, seamless integration of that process. Advanced really in personalized medicine and precision medicine. We're seeing that a lot in genomics and biometric integrations that we're seeing. I foresee that's going to continue to come up. Predictive analytics, like we mentioned with pop health management and chronic diseases, is another area. Definitely more in diagnostic imaging. There's a lot more out there for diagnostic medical imaging that could be coming up in the future with that. Natural language processing, as we discussed, faster clinical documentation, less clicks, and providers do count clicks, and primarily it's not because just the amount of clicks, but each one of those clicks puts them in a different place in the EMR, where they now have to look from the left to the right to the corner to the other corner, and it's less time they're spending with the patient, more time they're spending in a big monitor talking to a computer or trying to enter documentation on a computer rather than actually spending that time with the patient, which is extremely important. So I think language processing and ambient listening is really going to go to the next step on that. Workflow optimization is a huge one as well, because that's going to give you, your predictive staffing, your bed management, your, hopefully preventing bottlenecks, right, in different areas, like you're helping reducing wait time in those components. And what hospital doesn't have an issue with wait time? What ER doesn't have an issue with wait time, right? So these are things, these are actual problems that everybody faces. One area that I see an interesting part is like data security. Right, so teaching those modules to look for anomalies. What's different? I recall, something that my mom always told me when I was a kid. So she was teaching me how to do auscultations, and she taught me that the very first thing I need to learn is how to listen to a normal heart and a normal sound of the lungs. And I said, well, why? I want to hear something different. Like the answer was, the moment you know what normal is, now you know when something is not normal.
Right.
Once you're very comfortable with that normal and you know it very well, you would easily identify something is not normal. Maybe you don't know what it is yet, but you'll be able to identify it. And in this case, right, so you're training those models to really look into those anomalies. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it should be. If you see something that is not what it should be, that is doing a spike somewhere or a specific file that shouldn't be in that folder, pull it out. So it's an opportunity there. And last but not least, really remote and rural healthcare. That's something like telemedicine and remote patient monitoring devices would really be extremely helpful, because in a big city like Miami, New York, LA, maybe not that much of an issue. When you go into small rural areas, these are things that could potentially, save lives and definitely help with chronic diseases as well. Those monitoring devices and whatnot. So I think that's an area that will definitely see expansion there.
Man, thank you for letting us know that, because we can see that the healthcare delivery system could look radically different, and we would want it to be better, more precise, especially in America. Now we've got a question that just came up from Dr. Uh, Neat, and I'm not going to pronounce that right, but that will say Dr. Smart. She wants to know, in India, how is AI going to drive digital healthcare? So I'm going to bring this over to Roanoke, and kind of the same question. In 3 to 5 years, just project yourself in time in a time module. What does Roanoke Shaw see in the future?
So this is what we see, because we work on AI day in and day out, all day long. And we see that AI is going to completely reshape the healthcare IT industry in coming years, and if we talk about the examples, Ray gave us amazing examples of how he sees it. And what I have seen is, let me give you some case studies or real world examples. And the examples that I'm trying to give is either they are already implemented or they are in the process of being implemented. So I'm not talking about real long future. This is all in process right now. So what we have seen is AI model that are really focusing on a predictive and preventive care right now. So when we talk about AI, you always have to think about the machine learning algorithms as well. So because the machine learning algorithms, they work so closely with EHR systems, and then they are able to forecast diseases. Now they forecast diseases based on what? Patient's data, their medical history, or their genetics. So the classic example that I want to tell you about this is one of the patient, it's a real world example. His father had an heart stroke at the age of 44. Okay, and the son was almost getting up to that age, and the machine learning algorithm had pretty much predicted that he is also prone to a heart disease pretty much around the same time. And the same son, he also got the stroke pretty much at the same age as his dad, because all it was all genetic.
Yeah.
Their food habits were very clean, everything was super exercise, but the genetics data, the machine learning algorithms predicted that this patient would have around the same age based on their uh, whole medical history. So now you can exactly understand that when you could have high risk of either diabetes or even the heart disease, something like that. Now the AI models are very smart on detecting the patient's deterioration of health in the ICU. Let's say the patients are in ICU, the AI algorithms are actively monitoring the vital signs of the patient, what's going on with the patient in the real time. And they are also connected with the real time lab reports and those things. So they analyze that, and they alert the providers that what kind of mortality rates could have happened in this ICU. So because of that high alert system, what we have seen, there is a reduction on the mortality rates. They say around 15-20%, but it's in the process right now. And Ray came with the amazing thing, which is medical imaging. The IBM Watson or whoever is working on the AI based medical imaging now, detecting the cardiovascular diseases through CT scans. So that's coming up. Before that, the cardiovascular disease detection would happen probably angiography or whatever the other processes they were doing. But now even from the CT scan, IBM Watson is working on designing. They pretty much started it, and they have a deep learning, so they detect the abnormalities in the heart images right from the CT scan. And the accuracy levels are so high. They are saying it's probably more than 90% accuracy rates that they are able to achieve. Now another, in the breast cancer side, we have seen a lot of AI based ultrasound that is coming up. So they are detecting the breast cancers through the ultrasound. And that's an amazing, even here I want to mention more is, this ultrasound, they do not process the data in cloud. This is all edge AI. Now we see the real application, if the AI model is deployed in cloud or edge. So they pretty much try to run the AI model on the edge on the ultrasound machine itself, and then they're able to detect the breast cancer, and the diagnosis has become much faster. This is more than 35% diagnosis been faster, and the increase in the accuracy in detecting the tumors. Now the most important part is the automation of the clinical workflows. Here I want to mention an amazing example, because automation of workflows, we completely understand every industry is going through automation, whether it's healthcare or legal or fintech or whatever. But how the automation here helping is, we all struggle in the prior authorization from medical insurances, right? Hey, we need a special treatment now. uh, the our healthcare provider, they have to go for the insurance, get the prior authorization before we get the appointment or whatever it may be. So much human work is involved here, so much paperwork is going on. But Ray already mentioned that it's NLP, the natural language processing. Those algorithms are so great, they automatically will do a lot of approval and denying based on the prior authorization request. And this is going to bring a huge reduction on the paperwork. We see probably it's going to reduce 60 to 70% reduction in the manual paperwork. Now we are talking about real world efficiency. How much time we can save by using these AI algorithms. People are struggling all day long on the phones and getting the approval from insurance companies. This is going to be pretty much automated as we talk. And then on the retinal side, the disease detection, that is also from eye scan itself. They will be able to find, the deep learning model will be integrated in the eye scans, and they will be able to find if there is a diabetic retinopathy issues are coming up or not.
Wow.
So this is an amazing thing. Now the most important part is hospitals struggle always on their bed management. Like Ray already came up with this. Like they have 200 or 500 beds. They also want to make sure that they want to optimize the utilization of the beds, because they
Mhm.
can't afford to have 100 beds lying for free for 2 3 days. So it's very important that they give the patient care at the same time with optimum utilization of the hospital. So AI models, they're able to predict the patient discharge time. They see how the current patients are, what are their treatment plans, how well they are doing, how much they've improved. So based on this and historic data, they'll say that, okay, in next 1 week we would have probably this many discharge of the patient. Based on that, the team will allocate bed to the newer patient or schedule newer surgeries or something like that. So this machine learning and algorithms and AI algorithms is going to do wonders. That's what we see. This is not an overnight process. Okay, it
Yeah.
takes a long time, because every healthcare facility is operating differently. So you have to train your AI model with the real time data, updated data. As I said, even the diseases are changing over the period of time. So you have to also train the data that, you have to consider the newer updated diseases that's going on in the world, and that's how they design and retrain the whole model. Now apart from that, the cancer detection, now that would be very much possible from the pathology slides itself.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
AI models will be integrated into the digital pathology scanners, and that would really automate the cancer detection. Isn't that great? Like you
Yeah.
go, and from that point, that, hey, you probably would have something like this. No, definitely, then there are definitely detailed tests that the patient has to go through. But you can really identify from these pathology scans. So that's what they are working on. And in fact, I believe Mayo Clinic and Google Health, a lot of them are working together on this idea right now. Pretty much they've done a lot of tests as well. So, and they believe that this pathology scans that they're going to design would have more than 90% accuracy.
Whew.
So this is going to be absolutely different. Like we, after a few years of time, AI would be like a normal. It's here right now. It's an AI. Everybody talks about it, but it will be pretty normal that AI would do everything. pretty much in terms of the diagnostics and the treatment as well.
Well, I'm going
So
to thank Dr. Smart for bringing that question to the forefront, and that both of your answers are it just shows that it'll be night and day as we think about it. It'll be, pre AI in healthcare, then post AI after full deployment, and what it's going to really look like and radically change the healthcare delivery system. I think
yep.
that is wonderful. Um,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
had
and
some, but
there are a couple of things that I wanted to discuss, that what we see right now on the virtual care facility, because these old patients are struggling a lot. We see it. The all the young people are able to understand the gadgets and the tools and computers and everything. They are able to get everything done quickly. But what it when it comes to the old patients, who are having hard time. So there is some kind of AI trainings and models will be designed to comprehend easily with those. Like there'll be AI chatbots that will work pretty much like a virtual nurse. They're like virtual nurse assistants. So they'll speak to this whole patient. Even they will do everything. They will even remind the medication time that, hey, it's your medication time. Or even they will do mental health counseling. That's what we see, because health counseling, mental health counseling is very important for certain age level of people, because there's so much of loneliness at certain age, and they need someone to talk. So this is going to be very important. And the most important part where AI is going to be very helpful is in the drug discovery and clinical trials. So right now all these just drug discovery that are happening, like any molecules that they use in the drug, it takes them years to come to the conclusion that, okay, if we use these molecules, how it's going to behave. Now what they're thinking is, instead of years, they're going to probably have drug discoveries set up in months. So within few months of time, they would have a lot of drugs that will be designed and treated for the patient. So yeah, there are so many other things can be done AI, but I'll pause here.
no, I mean, this is, I'm sure that Ray is just like, it's going to, the job you had, like you've been doing this, I think you said 15 years plus now, and you're really big into Epic, which is the electronic health record system, and how everything has to, that's home base, right? Everything has to then operate out of that to get clarity of all these different systems working together. And I got a lot of my friends now at the ACHE in Houston, and then some of them were at the HIMSS conference in Vegas earlier this month. Both of them just text me really the same type of question. So I'm going to ask this to Ray, and they're talking about the role of IT governance. You see that right now in the chat about the role of IT governance in selecting and improving AI tools for healthcare environments with strict compliance. Now you're in that Epic world. You see what gets into Epic, and then what does it. I mean, are they working with IT governance now to kind of come up with these frameworks?
Well, yes, but remember the other piece is always define what the problem is. Your problem and what solution you're trying to look for is what's going to drive the next step, right? So at the level that already you need IT governance and compliance, yeah, healthcare, it's a heavily restricted group that you have to make sure that HIPAA are correct. You have to make sure that there's obviously patients' lives are at risk, and
Mhm.
health information, documentation and components you don't want out there. So you have to make sure you do your due diligence, but every company has this, right? So you will check and make sure that security processes are done in place. Where is going to be your data? Do you have a BA in place? What are those components that need to occur, right? So within your IT governance and also your compliance department from your larger institution. But again, it always goes back to what problem you're trying to solve, work with your people, define your processes and what is you need to help, and then ultimately bring the technology. Technology, I think, is, for lack of a better word, potentially the easiest piece in here, because defining the problem and what are you trying to solve and how to get to it, I think is extremely important. Getting those minds from the IT side, IT governance, and then also the clinicians. They're extremely important. They're the ones ultimately who are going to be using the tools that you're going to present. So it makes no sense for IT to come in and present tools that are not going to be utilized. You don't have a buy-in correctly from the clinicians and those perspectives. So ultimately we're here to serve them, for them to serve their patients. So we have to look at that, and that's going to be our north star all the time. Our patients, because we're here to serve the clinicians are here to serve their patients. So that's what I think that the role really with IT governance comes in, really working together with clinical operations to make sure that we're looking at our same north star, that we're trying to find a solution for the problem they're having, and how we can then best implement it within our system. Because let's also be honest, AI is also not necessarily cheap. And there's guardrails that you have to put into that as well, right? So what can you implement to what level? Like Ronak said, a lot of the components really are done on a phase base. Let's do a phase, let's do a pilot phase here, see how it works. Let's look into it again. Really agile for project management, right? So this is really agile project management. You do it here, you optimize it. Now, can you expand it? Is this something that you can expand elsewhere, and what it will take, what it will look like? But collaboration and communication, I think is extremely important.
That's so important because you talk AI governance, that's something that has to be the policy, right? Or the policies around that. And what you just talked about is just how you deploy it and what is the ultimate mission you're trying to accomplish. One of the things that always comes up, and we're going to touch on, we got some time, a little bit of time here, cybersecurity. Because as you integrate all, especially when you talk about data sets, right? And Bruno talked about data sets. You got to make sure that the data is right. Well, if the data is corrupted, and you have some kind of cybersecurity event that takes place, and everyone knows, with the ransomware that's happening even, now, is that going to be more explosive potentially because maybe you have more touch points, or maybe it's more secure because now you'll be able to secure it more because these AI bots. And I love how you said earlier, Ray, when you said what normal is. So if you know what normal is, when you have an abnormality, perhaps potentially a cyber event, and you don't always have to have a human in the loop for certain things from a cyber perspective. I want to get both of your takes on, do you think cybersecurity in healthcare data is going to be, more vulnerable or less vulnerable? I open the floor.
Yeah, so
I can try you one,
I'll
right?
just
So
I'll just take it quickly, and then we can definitely switch to Ray. So from cybersecurity point of view, there are so many AI algorithms are being designed right now. We have seen events last year, outage in because of that company CrowdStrike. We had so many problems. It was kind of the airlines and number of other things went down because of one small mistake. So now if you look at from the cybersecurity point of view, the data is a key game. What they are trying to do is steal the data and utilize that data in a different ways, or try to make money on top of data. Now the AI models, they are becoming smarter day by day. So the AI models are trained, and where they know what's the actual workflow of the whole organization. So these AI models will work quite differently. They are not for workflow automation, or they are not for the actual deployment. They would actually monitor the overall organization's workflow in terms of the normal workflow. And if there are any deviation would come in, they would ask for the permissions level. So they would make a roadblock and say, okay, we see a deviation here, can you have permission? So then the human in the loop would come in right away. So they would not let it process the next step until, so the moment they find a deviation, there will be something like that. Now, so the AI models, what I see is then from cybersecurity point of view, is going to be more stricter. They definitely see there are always problems. The hackers gets always smarter, and they will train AI models on top of that AI model to how to even mimic that AI model. But it's kind of a race between both ends. Who is doing the first step and who is on the second. But you will be always able to stop and break them as the AI gets smarter and smarter. But there is always innovation going on even in that field. We know ethical hacking and all those things. These ethical hackers, we pay them huge to even make sure that they really know what they are doing. So it's gonna be we cannot not, and never say that it's not going to happen. It would happen. It will always happen. But the AI models will help us to smoothen our life, hopefully much better than what we had it in past.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Mr.
And
Crespo.
yeah, I will add to that. Well, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so I want to put it out there. But in terms of the components, right, what we were just discussing, I want to hit the nail on the head. Realistically speaking, in today's world, if you don't update your computer, if you don't update your operating system, or you don't update your phone, you're at risk. So this is no different, right? So AI models will need to continue to learn. You need to maintain and really find a way and find a balance to ensure that you have that prevention out there, right? And you're constantly updating to hopefully try to prevent it. The reality is that there is a risk, there is a high risk out there, and the best you can do is try to prevent from those things. As I alluded before, I think data security has to do a lot with AI now, and looking at those anomalies, right? So again, looking at it from the patient perspective or the AI perspective, if this is normal, when I see something that shouldn't be here, there's a trigger alert, and that's where the AI models, can be trained to, and has the capacity again to not necessarily have a human being in front of that particular PC or that particular computer 24 hours a day to be able to alert those things, be able to then trigger certain effective components right behind it, like Ron alluded to as well. Now, shut down. If I see something is not supposed to be, shut that down, right? So don't allow that data to go out. So those are things where definitely the technology would be very, very helpful, especially with AI. So
Let me ask you this, Ray, before I let you go, because this is interesting for me. Agentic AI. And for some of our artists that don't understand agentic AI and what it really is that now you're taking something like right now, generative AI, LLMs, large language models like your chat GPTs, other world Claude, things like that. They are what you call reactive. They work, you give them a prompt, then they act. But if you don't give them anything, they don't act. Agentic AI is proactive. So it's doing things based on its rules that you don't need a human in the loop for it, let's just say. In your world, and you live right now in an epic world, where do you see a tool like that really being something that will help you?
well, think about it. So from the perspective of just security, right? So we're just talking about security. You want to make sure those tools are really out there and they're looking ahead for you, right? You want to make sure that you're not the one that's going to get a data breach. And you want to make sure that your systems are updated. So it could be runs automatically to check on those things. There could be automatic checks for X, Y, and Z. Automation of deletion accounts or stopping accounts, preventing passwords from being changed or things like that. So there's a lot of elements that could be in there. In terms of the patient itself, right? So in terms of the clinical perspective, again, look at those nurses in a room at 11 p.m. at night. You have X amount of patients per nurse. You want to also use, like Ronald said before, they're going to be vital checks. They're happening right then and there. So they're going to be predictive analytics that tell you, hey, the vitals are not necessarily going up. They're kind of like going down. And we've seen this with a trend. Go check on the patient, right?
Mm.
Go take a look and see what happens. Maybe that, it's the simple as the SpO2 sensor starts to slip out of the finger. How many of you have been in the hospital and the SpO2 sensor that is plugged into your finger has slightly started to come off, or you're taking it off because you didn't like it there, right? So we've all been there. And that is something that AI would, has the capacity to then help with that and then pull in, right? So from those predictive components from there, right? So there's plenty of others, like I said, in predictive analytics, in terms of genomics, in terms of cancer, and Ronak mentioned very good examples of those that definitely have opportunities in there as well.
I tell you, we've had a lot of food for thought. We've only got a minute left. I just wanted to thank you, Ray, for coming on, being our guest today, and really, bringing some insights to the game. We didn't get to one of the questions by Dr. Martin, who was talking about guardrail development, fine-tuning accuracy, value of AI technology, and critically. So I think we might have answered that, during this discussion. This is an ongoing discussion. I want to encourage the audience to continue to engage with us. This is why we do these webinars, to get engagement, to really get, talk about the elephant in the room. And what Ray said earlier is so important. We're just at the beginning part of this. In 3 to 5 years, this environment is going to look so totally different. And to Ronald's point, it'll just be normal. We're used to it. Like we've gotten used to our car and our house almost talking to us now, right? Telling us information. We can get automated, weather reports, things of this nature. We need to understand the automation, and then we're finding out that fine-tuned balance of how this all works. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us today. Come back again next month. We'll have another guest with Ronak and I as we talk about these developments in emerging technology. Thank you again for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Grant. Thanks, Ray. Bye.